Hello developers, welcome back to the series of reactjs developer interview questions and answers. This is 7th video of this series. In this video we're going to discuss a question about tic-tac-toe game board. We need to create a board, game board with two players um, simultaneously can play, and we need to show the result of the game as won or draw. There are two status for a result of a game, won or draw, and we need to add the functionality for resetting the board when the result has declared. So this is 7th video of this series. If you haven't watched my previous videos, I'll leave the whole playlist link in the description, or I put it in the cards that will be shown on top right corner of this video. So let's get started. Let me close the preview for now. So I want to create one component for board. So I'll create one folder called components, and inside that I'll create one file, board.jsx. I'll quickly export. This will display some data, board cells, I'd say. I'll save it, and let's display that component here. Board. Is this imported? Yes. Let's see the UI. Right, we're seeing the board cells, nothing new. So here, in a tic-tac-toe board, we'll be having 9 cells, right? So for each cell we'll be having one value, either 0, either O or X. For I'm assuming that for player 1 will be having X, for player 2 will be having O. So let me create one state variable. I'll call it board, set board, use state. So I'm taking array, and inside that I'll take 3 arrays, and each array represent a row, right? So since we have 9 cells, 3 rows and 3 columns, so all these 9 cells will be inside an array, and that array will be having 3 arrays, and each nested array inside this parent array will be treated as a single row. So for each row we'll be having 3 values, right? So I'll take empty strings for now. Okay, now we're going to have to display this data, these board's values, in the UI. So for that we'll use the map function, board.map. Let's call it row for each nested array. For each children array we're calling it as row, and there will be r index. R index is the row index. Arrow, and inside that take one div. We'll call it I will give a class name called row, and inside each row, so each row is an array again, right? So we're gonna have to take one more map function, row.map. Here we'll call it as cell, and this is c index, cell index, or maybe column index, since we're taking r index as row index. And inside this we'll take one more div, and we'll just display the cell value. For now the cell values are empty, right? So there won't be any anything to display in the UI. Like UI will be empty. Let me add some values here. I'll add 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. I'm adding this because there will be, so instead of that, we don't we just not let's not disturb this board values. Instead we'll just display some values right here only, R index and C index. They'll be giving the same values, right? 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2. Now we need to display a row wise, right? For each, in these cells should be in a row. So we can take advantage of this row class now. Let me create one file, board.css. This CSS will be used inside this board component, board.css. Dot row display flex. Justify content center, align items center. Let's see what happens here. Right. So these elements should be clickable, right? So let's make them buttons instead of divs. Button. Right now these are clickable. So now let's talk about the players. Let's assume that there will be two players. Why should we assume there should be only two players, right? So there will be P1 on the left side and P2 on the right side. So for that, let me create one component which we can reuse for displaying the players. I'll call it as player.jsx const player. I'll take h1 tag p1. Let's say it will take this component takes a prop, player num or something, play number. This will be displayed here, right? And there will be two players, right? So player num p1 on the left side, p2 on the right side. Let's see the UI. P1 and P2 are there. I want to arrange this in horizontal orientation. So this is in app.js, right? And so in style.css we have this one, display flex. Okay, let's see. Now they are in sideways. Justify content center, align items center. It's not happening. Yes, it is happening, but the height is not up to the full. It's not 100%, so it's let's give some padding top. Padding top would be fine. 2 amp. Let's give 3 amp, right? And there should be some gap, right? So instead of giving some gap space between, space even. Right, this is fine. And these buttons looks odd, so let's add some styling for those buttons. Buttons, give some width, 40 pixels, height also 40 pixels, 40, maybe 60 would be fine. Right, now we need to create a logic for taking the player turns, P1 turn and P2 turn. So for that we need to have we need to maintain the state, and that state uh, has to be accessible for all the components that we have created, right? Player component and board component. So better we can create one state in app.js itself, or I think we can go for context also, instead of creating a state here and passing it as a prop and maintaining the state management using state lifting and all. We can directly go for the context. Let me create one folder here. I'll call it as context. I'll create one JSX file, player context.jsx. I'll I'll create one context, player context, create context. It is imported from React. Now let me export one JSX here. Player context provider. This component will take one children because we need to wrap the whole application, whole app into like inside these providers, right? So I'm exporting, and this children prop will be there, and this will return. What happened? Export, we should have const keyword here, right? Player context dot provider. This should be closing tag, and here we should display the children, and we need to provide some values, right? And that values uh, will contain the state that we want to have, the player turn state, the current player turn state. I'll take one state variable, current player, set current player, use state. Initially it will be P1, and both of these will be accessed by the components, children components. So I'm passing it in the value. Now once this is done, we can access, I think we can access these values in the children component, which are like board.jsx and player.jsx. Before that, we need to wrap this whole application into like inside the provider that we have created, right? Player context provider. Right, this is imported, and inside app we have player, right? So, and inside, let's go to player, and then now const player, I'll just say my context, use context. Inside that we need to pass the player context that we have created using create context. I think the name of that context is player context, but this is not exported. Let's export it, save it, copy and paste it here, and we need to import it. Done. I think that is it. Now we can till now I think the app will be working. There won't be any change. So when player 1 is active, I'm gonna show player 2 as somewhat dull, like less opacity, maybe half of the opacity, right? So that we can indicate that player 1 is active and he has to take his turn, and then player 2 will be active. And when player 2 is active, it will be same for P1. It will be half opacity. Let's use that opacity functionality here using the class names. Let's create class name my context dot current player, right? Current player. If it is we have player num, right? If it is player num, I'm assuming that player num prop will contain the same string as of the current player that we are storing in the context. So if it is same, then he is active player. If it is not same, he is inactive player. Right. So the class names are there. Now we have to create the styling part. Player.css. Use this CSS inside this JSX. Import player.css. We have inactive, right? Inactive. Opacity 0.5. Let's see if this is working. Right, P2 is somewhat less visible. Let's make it 0.3 to make it more prominent. 0.2, 0.3 would be fine, right? Now let's add the functionality for clicking the board cells here, right? Let's go to board.jsx, and each button will be having an on click, right? So const handle cell click, I'd say. So this function will take two arguments. One is r index, and second one is r index is the row index, and c index, which is column index. Now we have column index and row index. Now we can find the position of the button that is clicked, the cell position that is clicked inside this board state that we are having, and we update it. And based on the player turn, we need to update the value, whether like if the active player is P1, then we need to append or update this board value with X, right? If it is player 2, if the player 2 is active, then we need to update it with the O value. So for that we need to have we need to access that context again. Const my context is equal to use context player context. So So before that, let's have one shallow copy of the board values, the existing board values. I'd say updated board is equal to dot 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 board, and here we'll just update the value. R index C index is equal to my context dot current player. If the current player is P1, then we'll have X as value. If it is P2, then we'll have capital O as value. And once this is done, we'll just update it, set board, right? Set board, updated board, right? And this handle cell click will be attached to the on click event of each button click. And inside that we need to pass two arguments, C index, R index and C index. Let's see, for now let's remove these two. Clicking this X, clicking this will give again X. Okay, and now if you observe, the P1 is staying active, right? P2, when I click the button or the cell, it should the turn should pass to the P2, right? We should update the player status also, current player state also. So once this is clicked, then we need to update it. So that is also coming from my context, right? My context set current player. It would be same as this. If it is P1, then we'll update it to P2. If it is P2, we'll update it back to P1. If it is P1, P2, P1, right? Let's see the UI. So P1's turn is done. Now P2 is active. It should be displaying O, right? Yeah. Right. Great. The board is working fine. Now we need to have the logic for checking the um, result conditions, right? What are the things that has been asked here? Till now, create a tic-tac-toe game board. The board is created. There are two players that can be having turns. Show the result as game won or draw, right? So we need to have a logic for checking the game status whenever a change happens inside the board. So inside this component, let's create one function, const game status check. This will take one argument board vals. Now whenever whenever a change happens inside the board, so here is where we are updating the board, right? On the click of cell. So this function will be called here after this, maybe after this. Check game status to determine win or draw, right? So in this board, there are a possibility of winning, right? There could be row, right? A row can have same value. A column can have a same value, whether if it is X or O. based on the player turn. Um, so there is the winning can be done if the row is matching or a column is matching with all values, or there could be diagonals, right? So we need to check all these possibilities. So let's start with row wise checking. Row wise checking. So let's uncomment these things so that we can get better understanding of the indexing indices. So here we have 0 0, right, and there is 0 1 0 2 and 1 0 1 1 and 1 2. If you observe these numbers, if we go row wise, the the first number is consistent, right? So we can have one for loop for each row. So let me create one for loop for that. For let I equal to 0, I less than 3, I plus plus. So here the row is constant for each row, right? In this row the row number is 0, in this row the row number is 1, in this row the row number is 2. So there will be 3 loops that will be um, checking this condition, the row wise condition. So I'm assuming that this condition will be checking for winning only, will take care of the draw at the end. Okay, so if board board vals, right, board vals of I, for the first loop I will be 0, and for the second loop I will be 1, and third loop I will be 2 and a 0. So this has to be equal to board vals I of 1. This has the first one has to be, the first cell has to be equal to the second cell, and the second cell has to be equal to the third cell. Board vals of 0, sorry, uh, I of 1 equal to board vals of I 2. And before checking all these conditions, we need to make sure that at least uh, like we're assuming that this condition will be satisfied, right? So for that we need to have one such condition, whether if the first cell has at least a string or not, right? Initially it is empty, so let's check for that condition also. Board vals of I 0 and so if the first cell has some value, then only check these conditions. Otherwise these conditions will not be validated, because the first cell is empty and there is no point of checking the whole row, right, when the first cell itself is empty. So that's why we need to have this condition before checking all these conditions. So if it is true, then game one. So for maintaining the status of the game, we need to have one state. I'll say game status, set game status, use state. Initially it will be, let's say, ongoing. The game is ongoing at the start, right? And when this is true, then let's say set game status to 1, and let's see. If the ear is not breaking, then there is no problem, right? Let's do for columns also. So column wise, if you observe, the second part of each cell 0 0 1 0 2 0, the second part, the second number of each cell is consistent for each column. So we need to have the similar conditions, this kind of condition here. This is for row wise checking. I'll put it here, and here itself we're going to use the same for loop for column wise checking. Column wise checking, and we'll paste it, and here we'll just swap the values 0 and I, 1 and I. Right. Once this is done, the column wise and row wise checking is done. We can go for there are other possibilities, right? Diagonal wise checking. We need to do we need to validate those conditions also. I'll say diagonal wise check. So the conditions will be similar. Instead, we'll just use the values directly. Comment this. Let's comment this. What are the values of diagonal cells, right? 0 0 1 1 2 2. So let's cover those things first. So it will be similar 0 0 1 1 2 2. So once this diagonal is done, and there is one more diagonal, right? We need to cover that also. So 0 0 1 1 2 2 is done. 0 2 1 1 and 2 0. 0 2 0 2 0 2 1 1 1 1 and 2 0. Right. Once if any of these conditions are satisfied, this function should return the values, right? Just return nothing whenever a game status has been updated with one status. Just return it because we don't want to continue the loop once the status is updated as on, right? So it will just return here. So this is to avoid the unnecessary loops that are going to execute. So once the status is getting updated, we need to check it. So before that, we'll just use the game status state to display the game status here. I'll use h5 tag game status right. And so currently the game status is ongoing. We need to call this function, right, whenever there is a change happen in the handle click with the updated board. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, these numbers shouldn't be there. Let's remove these. Player 2 turn, player 1 turn, player 2, player 1, player 2. So the game status is 1, right? It is 1 by player 1, and now the game is still on because we're not stopping the game. Because these things can be clickable and the game is still continuing. We need to have we'll have to disable the game board whole board if the status is 1, right? So for that we'll use disabled attribute. Disabled is equal to game status is 1. If it is 1, then it will be disabled. Player 1 x 0, sorry, o x o x. Game status 1, player 1 is inactive and player 2 is active. Why did that happen? On click my context dot set current player, right? This shouldn't be happening here. Whenever there is a change happens, right, after game status check, then only we need to update the player turn. Otherwise this function will just return. It won't be executing this part. Let's see what happens now. Player 1, player 2, player 1, player 2, player 1, right? Now the player 2 is not active, player 1 is still active, and the game status is 1. Now let's check for draw status, right? So when this game will be draw, right? So when all the cells are filled, then we can say that and there is no possibility of winning, then the board is stuck, right? Then the game is draw. So we will have that condition before doing the player change, current player change. Draw checking. So in JavaScript we have a function called a function for a function on top of array um, to check if every cell has a value or not, right? We'll use every function dot every function which will be returning one boolean value. I'll call it as is draw board wells dot every row for each row. We're gonna have to check for every again, like check for every cell again, right? So we'll use row dot every, we'll call it as cell. If cell, then this whole function returns true, then this whole function returns true, and then this whole value will be returning true. And if it is draw, then we'll just update the game status. If is draw, set game status as draw and just return it, right? Let's see if this is working or not. So x 0 x 0 x 0, okay, that is 1. We shouldn't do that. Now this is 0 and this is x, right? So that is also not possible. Oh my god, this is hard to make a draw. Let's try. X 0 x 0 x 0. Now player 1, right? So this will be a 1, this will be 1, so this will be okay. Now it is draw. Hmm. Wow. How do I get a draw? Oh, so the cells which are already occupied, they are still clickable and they change the value. That's a bug. We need to resolve that. Mm, we can have one more condition in this disabled. If there is any cell value, then this will be disabled, right? So that it will not be accessed after clicking. Now X is disabled, right? Okay, 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 right, right, right. Now player 2 turn here and player 1 turn. Oh, this will be 1. X, O, X, O, X. Yeah. Now we see that game status is draw. So this means that draw status is also working. Um, Once all this done, let's see what are the things that has been done till now. We have a board, we have 2 players, show the result, we are showing the result, add reset board functionality. We need to have that reset functionality, right? Let's add that reset functionality too. So in the board itself, we'll have one button uh, beside, just below the game status. There is a button reset, and there is one function handle reset. This will reset the board. Set board to the initial state that we have. Let's collapse this. Right, and also set game status to the initial status again on going. Is there anything else we have to do? We'll have to set the player turn also to player 1. So where is that? Game status check, and at the end of the function we can use this. So here we'll just set it to B1 at the start. Right, let's see the functionality. We have a reset board. Let's check the reset. We didn't attach the on click, I guess. Handle reset. On click, handle reset. What's wrong here? These should be curly brackets. Right, let's see. Player 2 something 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 reset to initial. Player 2 reset to player 1. Right, this is ongoing. Let's see. X, X, X. Game 1, player 1 won the game. Let's reset. Yep, this is resetting to ongoing. I think that is it. Everything is done. We can have little bit of styling to make it look good, but that's okay. At this point, I think all the logic and all the things that has been asked are working. So I think that is it. Let's conclude this video. So this is seventh video. If you haven't watched my previous videos, I'll leave the link of the whole playlist in the description. You can watch it, and also you can comment your own approach to this problem. I'll definitely appreciate it and address it in my next videos. Thank you.